We were at the gates of winter, in the days of the solstice. The first snows, recently fallen, had brought with them the chill of the dog season. When that day I went out in the woods, the sun was already setting. A great sense of emptiness and an hunger that I could not explain had driven me to leave the warmth of my home, thinking that the cold would have helped me. Christmas always made me so gloomy, and I could not understand why. I had everything I could want, a roof over my head, and a family who loved me as I loved them. But then, what was this emptiness? I had no idea, but I knew I felt like a hollow, dark log. I lacked light. I was walking along the snowy path with the intention of getting away from home, at least for a while. Whatever I would have preferred to the annoying lights, the deafening voices, and that sickening joy I could not understand. Even though I had all these thoughts in my head, I knew well how easy it was to get lost at dusk in the woods, especially with the snow whitening everything. I was trying therefore to be careful about the road I was traveling on. That was the usual bench that I encountered every time, and then the stream, now frozen. Here was now the smoothest tree in the woods, without any knot on its trunk, and then the rock that resembled the rippled face of a wise old man. I squinted my eyes to see better. It was getting dark, and that rock, maybe I was wrong, but it didn't look like the same. But how was this possible? Looking at it closely, however, I had the confirmation. I turned around and realized that I did not recognize the path from which I had come. I retraced my steps, and in disbelief, I saw that there were footprints only up to a few meters behind me. Then they disappeared. What did this mean? I certainly had come from there, but there were no footprints, and the forest seemed to be so different from the one in which I had walked for years. I was getting nervous, seeing that the light of the sun was reduced to a few thin rays, struggling to penetrate the thick tree's canopy. In the terror of the moment, I ran now in one direction, now in another, only worsening things and losing even more orientation. I struggled against time until even the last ray of sunshine went out and the mantle of night fell over the whole forest. Then I realized I was lost. I had let myself fall on a log, cut and covered with snow. I sat hugging myself even tighter in my heavy clothes and tried to find my way through the forest, at least with my eyes, but nothing seemed familiar. It was as if that forest that I had known all my life had become foreign to me, when suddenly a small, warm light went on a few meters from me, and then another and another. A path, at first invisible, was now lit by many low candles which ran along its sides. I got up slowly and began to walk down the candlelit path as I watched the ominous shadows of the trees. With each step I took, a new candle would light up, as if they were waiting to reveal to me a hidden road. Where they took me, I cannot say. too dim was the light of the candles to help orientation. At last, I arrived to a place I had never seen before. An ancient stone archway marked the end of the lighted path, and it was impossible for me to look beyond it because a dense fog had risen. I had nothing to lose, and a certain curiosity had kindled in me, so I walked slowly past it. The tangle of the trees had finally thinned out, and the high moon made it possible to observe the surroundings. I was in a clearing which stretched as far as the eye could see, surrounded by trees and small irregular fences. Ruins consumed by time could be seen all around, and at its center, thin, slender steps led up to a colonnade. A sudden gust of wind brought with it snow, which before my incredulous eyes took the form of a large man with feathered wings. He wielded a scepter with a large snow crystal, and with his other hand he held suspended a lantern in which a white fire was burning. At the sight of him, my legs gave way, and I fell to my knees, prey to astonishment and a vivid terror. When his bright eyes met mine, he raised his head and thus spoke to me solemnly. "Stand up, fear not. I am the angel of the solstice, and I come to rescue your lost soul. Listen, man, my story and my song of redemption for you. Three spirits visited me at the solstice of many years ago. That of Christmas past, of Christmas present, and Christmas yet to come. And I, out of awe or wonder, with great attention listened to them all, and only thus was I saved. This night, those same spirits will come to you, and if you know how to lend an ear, the void in your heart will finally be fulfilled." Having said this, a blazing light blinded me, and a woman appeared in the place of the angel. In her right hand, a long scroll unfurled to the ground. Pointing her finger at it, she indicated me to read. When I did so, my vision blurred, and I felt myself being transported elsewhere. I had, however, no difficulty in recognizing the place where I was once I could see again. My childhood village, deserted for a long time, was now decorated in the days of Christmas. The snow was soft, and the pace of people was slow and quiet. No one seemed to notice our presence. The spirit laid a hand on my shoulder, and my body began to float. Then, as driven by an invisible force, without my command, it began to follow the spirit as it flew over the city and the streets that I could have traveled blindfolded. In a blink of an eye, we reached the house where I had been born. The burning fire was like a magnet for the child, me and my older brother. We rubbed our hands together in the heat of the flames, and we would discuss what these or that other package under the tree were hiding. Watching the scene, I remembered every single thing, so much that I could predict what one or the other was about to say. I could not believe it. How could I suddenly remember so well an episode I had completely removed? Here comes Dad in, and Mom welcomes him with a hug. My brother and I run to him, and he lifts us both up. I was enjoying those wonderful memories as if I were reliving them. As if I were again that child that was spying through the window while he could not see me. Interrupting my joy, the spirit passed a hand in front of the glass of the window as she said, "Let us see another Christmas." Now, in front of the fire, there was only a child who was still rubbing his hands to warm them up, but he no longer had interest in the gifts under the tree. It was me, the child left alone. An unknown evil had taken my still small brother, leaving forever empty that place by the fire that had always been his own. There was no need to remember that sadness, for it had never left me.
Why are you showing me this?
I shouted, as a terrible hatred raged through me, and I turned sharply toward the spirit, ready even to strike her. But to my great surprise, I saw that the spirit was no longer there. In her place, my own face returned my gaze full of wrath. The spirit of Christmas present was also a woman, but instead of the scroll from which to tell the past, she illuminated a large oval mirror with a violet light candelabra.
Look at yourself, she commanded. Look at yourself and be sincere.
My reflection in the mirror then began to swirl, and I was sucked into it, as if it was a portal to another world. Sheer darkness stretched from every side. My eyes were open, I was sure of this, but there was nothing to be seen. Then, the voice of the spirit came to me as if from a distant dimension.
Ill-fated is the man who allows the past to poison the present.
What do you mean, spirit? I cried out, but no answer came in return. Moments later, however, out of the darkness, a vision began to take shape, gradually becoming sharper. I watched it as it was a giant projection before me, and I could not help getting lost in those images. The forest, the same as always, and the house where I lived with my family. It was a scene from a few hours before I got lost. I was sitting again by the fire, while my wife was busy in other rooms of the house. Like my brother and me years earlier, my two children were arguing about what the packages under the tree were hiding, while I remained lost in my own thoughts. The children's voices were growing louder and louder until they became screams because both of them wanted to be right. I knew what I was about to see, and I struggled to turn away, as if by not seeing I could erase my mistake. But my neck was constricted, and my eyes could not close.
Look at yourself,
ordered again the distant voice of the spirit. The me of the vision, which had tried to ignore the children's screams, exploded, filled with anger and disenchantment. What do you think to be in there? Useless objects for a happiness of a few hours. Don't fall for it. Don't let yourselves be deceived. There is nothing true in Christmas. I looked at my children's eyes, which looked like shattered mirrors. I had failed to protect them from the poison I was carrying inside, and I had let it poison them too. Now I could see what a terrible mistake this was, but how could I ever make up for it? Prey to the hunger, I had then taken the way to the woods, and I had forgotten every word that I had said. As I watched myself walking through the woods, the darkness around me had resumed slowly the shape of the clearing where I had met the Angel of Solstice. Instead of the colonnade, however, I now found a large stone throne. Sitting on it, a woman was moving mysteriously a hand over a bright crystal globe. She spoke to me quietly.
I am the spirit of Christmas yet to come. Come closer, and you will find out what awaits your heart, hardened by sorrow.
Knowing that I could not escape my destiny, I fearfully approached the crystal globe. Within it, wondrous mists were stirring as they began to show me something. I saw another Christmas, this time without lights or celebration. Some people sat around the table, rarely speaking to each other. At the end of the table, an old man sat in the background and was treated rudely when he asked for something. I recognized in the adults my children's faces, and my own the dull one of the old man. This is what will happen if you let evil poison your heart and then that of your children. Do you really want this to be your Christmas to come? Said the spirit. No, this is not what I wish. But what am I to blame for? Has life been right with me? Is it really my fault to have lost all light and hope? Doesn't matter what happened to you, but what you did in response to the pain. Feeling emptiness and sadness is right, but not to abandon yourself and allow yourself to be devoured by it. In your unconsciousness, you don't see that every day you drug your loved ones into your own misery, instead of trying to rise again as you should. One's choices always affect others. Visions of other Christmases appeared. The old me was more and more forgotten and neglected, and my children were more and more like me, men without light and without hope. Meanwhile, the voice of the spirit grew deeper and thundering, expanding as if it were a menacing choir, repeating me to redeem myself. It screamed louder, louder and louder. I slumped to the ground as the sky began to swirl furiously, as if a terrible storm was about to break out over me. When I woke up, there was a great silence. You could hear every light snowflake touching the ground. I gathered all my courage and raised my eyes at last. The angel of the solstice towered again above me. He raised the lantern, illuminating my face, and for one last time he spoke to me. Now you know what is coming to you if you do not make a better man of yourself. Treasure your pain and use it as strength for a more just future. We don't always have power over what happens to us, but we always have the power to purify it. Now go and remember, only you can save yourself. In front of my eyes, the angel dissolved into fine dust, which was carried away by a breath of wind. I covered my face with one arm to protect myself, and when I lowered it, no clearing was there anymore. I looked around not knowing whether it had all been a dream or not. But I knew for sure that those were my footsteps. That was the stream I knew well, and there stood the rock that resembled the face of an old man. And the one down the road, with the windows lit by a warm light, was my old own. In my heart, I finally felt that this was going to be it.